I have a story here for you. This is one of those things that should be a big deal. It should be a big story, but it's barely a blip on the radar because our media is totally broken. So shout out to Michael Sonato, who is a labor reporter for The Guardian. He does some phenomenal work. Look at this. Thousands of people with disabilities in the U.S. work for employers that pay sub-minimum wages, some for as little as 3 cents an hour. 13 states have banned the sub-minimum wage for people with disabilities, but these efforts still face aggressive opposition. So he did some reporting on this. Now, look at what just happened in Virginia, which, by the way, I'm basically a part-time resident in the state of Virginia now. Look at this. Republican Virginia Governor Youngkin amends bill that would end sub-minimum wage for workers with disabilities to keep current workers at sub-minimum wages until 2030. And then he has some reporting here from the American Independent. Virginia governor candidate connected to firm that paid disabled workers 11 cents an hour. This is who runs the country. These are the elitist ghouls that are in control. They're the donor class. They're the billionaires. They pay the politicians. They are the politicians. This guy was a Carlyle Group ghoul. Think about what we're talking about here. Sub-minimum wage for workers with disabilities. And he was connected to a firm that paid disabled workers 11 cents an hour. How is this allowed? How is this acceptable? I never understood. I remember the whole concept of like, well, yeah, we have the minimum wage, but then we have exceptions to the minimum wage. Like, for example, if you are a bartender or if you're a waiter or whatever, there's like, no, if you work for this, you can make like $4 an hour or whatever. It's like, what? What are you talking about? You can't have the minimum wage and then be like, well, in this area, we don't. Okay, then do we really have a minimum wage? It only applies to certain jobs in certain industries? That seems like a terrible idea. And so I never liked that idea in the first place. But now we're learning it's also the case for disabled workers, right? So by the way, what happens with these disabled workers? They might get a disability payment from the government or from Social Security or whatever, but they're certainly not living comfortable lives. And also, by the way, you can make an argument that you probably have more taxpayer funds involved, whereas if they're working, why not force the business to pay them a living wage so they can do better and the business stops acting like a parasite? I mean, that's what happens. We've covered the story with like Walmart, for example. They pay their workers so little that the workers have to run to Medicaid and have to run to food stamps or the SNAP program. And it's like, well, hold on. Then you have taxpayers subsidizing these low-wage workers when you could just force Walmart, who has the funds, to pay them a living wage up front. So Walmart gets to make colossal profits, but the taxpayer has to jump in and bail out the low-wage workers who work at Walmart. No, make Walmart actually pay them a living wage. I'm also happy with having a very good social safety net. I'd love that. I'd love universal healthcare and all those things. That should all exist already. But make the corporations pay them a living wage. Now we're talking about disabled workers making sub-minimum wage, and he changed the law to make sure they can continue to make sub-minimum wage. How is this anything except disrespectful and pro-poverty for disabled people? It's just they realize we can take advantage of these workers, what they would view as unskilled workers, and so they pay them next to nothing. That's astonishing, man. And this is all at the same time. You guys know this. If we just had the minimum wage be equal to what it was in the late 1960s, the minimum wage would already be over $10 an hour right now. So we have a lower minimum wage than we did in the late 1960s in real terms when you adjust for inflation. That's amazing. If you had the minimum wage simply kept up with the productivity of the worker, it would be over $20 an hour right now. I mean, if you had to keep up with the wage growth of the wealthy, it would be over $20 an hour right now. Workers are getting hammered. They're getting screwed. And they are trying to take advantage as well. since we have what's called a tight labor market, low unemployment right now, right? It gives the workers some leverage. So what are they doing to try to screw the workers? Well, you see it. A bunch of red states. Now you have, they're loosening child labor laws. Why? They want cheap labor. So kids, disabled workers who they can pay less than minimum wage. This is all unacceptable. We need sectoral bargaining in this country. We need the right to a union. We need a strong minimum wage because they will take advantage of anything and everything. And they're doing it. Imagine paying a disabled worker 11 cents an hour. He was linked to a firm that did that. Imagine axing a minimum wage increase for disabled workers. And you're not going to see anybody talk about this on CNN. You're not going to see anybody talk about this on MSNBC or Fox News or the nightly news. They just view this as par for the course. It is not par for the course. This is capitalism being vicious and hurting the most desperate among us. So again, shout out to Michael Sonato. Phenomenal reporting. Unacceptable. And everybody should be outraged by this. But again, you're not going to hear a peep. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.